all had these senses within ourselves. Acknowledging that is really important in healing any relationship to that part of your mind, acknowledging that it's there. So if you're having a hard time, that might be the first step, acknowledging that you do have intuition. And we can call it higher mind or not, that's fine. But we have this part of ourself that is speaking to us, with us, through us. And I keep holding my heart because I want to remember that it's when we drop into the heart, that's when we really are connected to that higher mind. Welcome back to Heartmind with Holli. I'm so excited to have you back for this episode and this second week of the whole podcast. I am ready. I have a great week prepared for you. I'm going into the higher mind and how we work with the higher mind, why it's important, how we start to heal from that place, what the different parts of the mind are when we talk about this sense of higher mind, and how to start to transform with the help and support of our higher mind. I'm super excited. Remember that in this type of work that I endeavor in as a teacher, healer, coach, and as a yoga practitioner, we look at healing as a sense of wholeness and unlearning and devolving as well as evolving continuously versus trying to fix or cure something. So it's a little bit different in its approach. And every first episode, every week, we'll focus on the healing, which often takes a little bit more of the feminine holding capacity to hold yourself and to allow the time for restoration. I'm really excited to have this week Stephen Ross, one of my first yoga teachers and a dear, dear friend, a dear leader in our field. He is in Manor, Texas, outside Austin, Texas, and I will be interviewing him around the higher mind. But first, let's just talk about what the higher mind might be and how different people talk about it. So you might have heard phrases like that, like higher mind or higher consciousness, or you might have even heard of collective consciousness, God consciousness, maybe. And all of these things are kind of connected. You might have heard of higher self. So this invitation to rise into your higher self. All of these are speaking pretty much to the same idea, same entity. And we can talk about nuances and things like that, but it's speaking to a part of yourself that is a little more expanded, a little more spacious. There's intuition, clarity, compassion, stepping into that witness self we talked about a lot last week with Cindy Albee and breath work. And in yoga and Ayurveda and Sankhya theory, often, God is seen as this dual system working together in witnessing and creating. And so it's stepping more into the witness part of ourselves, and that is very passive in some regards of just watching, observing. And from that place of watching and observing, then re-entering the choices that we make. And so in that in that witnessing place, we start to receive. We start to receive messages or receive from and co-create with that space of observing and receiving. Sometimes I get triggered by this idea of higher and lower because our system, our culture really looks at hierarchy as a form of productivity. And I want to say, in my belief, that no part of the mind is better or in hierarchy to the other, and that each part of the mind, whether we call it higher or lower, is serving a purpose and function and has a particular purpose for, uh, again, your evolution, your devolution um, of yourself. And therefore, if we believe we're interconnected, then for your community, both humanity and your community of earthly beings and ecology. So each part is equally important. So maybe you've had a time, and maybe for you, higher mind and higher consciousness, all of this stuff is a little more woo woo, potentially, or maybe it just doesn't resonate. One other word that really works that I've said maybe is intuition. There's a sense of knowing or being connected to something within your mind that's talking to you or speaking to you, whether it's with words and thoughts or whether it's just in your gut, right? You got a gut feeling. So, our intuition, I'm going to invite you to think of or recall a time when that was fairly clear to you, whether you acted on it or not. So, a time when your intuition told you, that's just not right, or that feels not the way that I want to go, the person I want to be. And same with um, that feels really right. I need to move in that direction. And it often is tied to decision making, but it doesn't have to be. It's just an intuition, something's telling me something. And it could be much grander. Stephen talks about this in our interview, much grander than just a simple, small decision. It could be a big wave of movement that you're needing to do with your energy in life, going into a different profession, a different location, things like this. And so we've all had these senses within ourselves. Acknowledging that is really important in healing any relationship to that part of your mind, acknowledging that it's there. So if you're having a hard time, that might be the first step, acknowledging that you do have intuition. And we can call it higher mind or not, that's fine. But we have this part of ourself that is speaking to us, with us, through us. And I keep holding my heart because I want to remember that it's when we drop into the heart, that's when we really are connected to that higher mind. And again, we might think that it's here in the head, but we drop down to hear those messages and sense into the direction. And when we enter that place, it's again self-observing, observing options, observing the environment, how we feel. But there's also a sense of non-judgment. It's not because we're judging the other way so much. When we're in that intuition place, it's just a gut feeling and a calling that happens. And that calling could be even smaller than that big grand thing of just, it's time to meditate right now. That calling to have a small action is possible as well. It's time to seek support and get coaching or therapy around X, Y, and Z. It's that calling that is drawing you deeper into healing or personal inquiry. And when we enter the higher mind, there is a state of non-judgment and compassion. And that's the just simply observing. It's not bad or good. We're just noticing. You're noticing, and you're noticing what you're noticing. There's this kind of mirror effect, going deep and seeing, hearing, using our senses. But what happens is another part of our mind can try to take over. And sometimes this is called in and Stephen's going to talk about a lineage with Yogananda. It's called the middle mind, or sometimes it's called the ego. And it's typically what we think in the West as our mind. So it's the one that's pretty conscious, and it's making a lot of choices for us, and it's really trying to protect us in a big way. It's highly analytical, and it's really strong with fiery people in the academic realm, and it's really fueled by being awake in the sun fire time of the day. So that's the middle mind, or what we think of often as the mind. And then there's the lower mind, or we can think of this as the subconscious mind. And of course, we've recognized this in the West for a while now. This is the part of ourselves that is on autopilot, that's running in the background and making choices for us. And this is where we can often feel like a victim to our own existence in our own mind, right? It's where addiction starts to take root. It's deeply tied to our ancestry. It's deeply tied to the patterns of evolving as a species, but also as a lineage. And it's where we start to fight as well with our middle mind. Because our middle mind may be wanting change or wants to control things, and then the lower mind has these programs where we start to submit, or we, in our downtime or rest time, we start to fall into the ease of that groove. I explained it to a client recently around this, and I've written about it, this samskaras. And this is where maybe the unconscious, it is where the unconscious samskaras lie. And this is where you have a certain groove, like think of the groove of a record playing. And maybe it was given to you by your father, your grandfather, your mother, your grandmother, and it just plays, and it's been playing since you were born. This music, and you know it, it's home. It feels like and sounds like home, and it's just so easy. It's almost like you don't even put the needle on the record. It's just playing. And so the conscious mind, or the middle mind, has to go over and maybe take the needle off, take that record off, and put the new record on. And the new record, put the needle on the new record in the new groove. At first, it might be hard to find it. You start playing it. But as soon as you kind of take a moment to rest, or maybe there's a niggle to just listen for a moment back to that other record, it comes back on. And it's harder in this process for you to take off that home record. It takes more effort in the beginning. But over time, what we're looking to do with our yoga and with these types of practices that are looking for transformation within ourselves is we're looking to make that process really easy, like a very a habit that you can take that record off and put the new record on. That's the higher and lower mind, though. So you put the new record on. This is what I want to play. This is what I want to listen to it, and this is the pattern that I want to do in my life with my mind. And it's a choice. But then they start to battle a little bit. Remember me, the home record. And that's one of the things Stephen really wanted to talk about, was that inner battle between the two. The higher mind helps us kind of get out of the battle for a little bit. And it helps us kind of just witness it. And I know we've all had that moment where we kind of laugh at ourselves, and we're able to just say, wow, this is really tough. This human thing of trying to change my behavior is really hard. And we also get to just take a moment, a respite, a refuge, the Buddhists would say in the meditation. And it's driven by meditation, connecting to this intuition and higher mind. And so we get to take a moment of refuge from, you know, listening to the old pattern or old music and trying to create and dedicate effort in listening to the new music. We get to take refuge, and in that, it starts to integrate what we have done. The patterns that we have started to shift over time. So I've talked about a little bit about healing, how to heal it. So meditation is huge with this, connecting to our intuition. It's more of a subtle practice, and the intuition is very subtle. The higher mind is very subtle. Another way that often helps or works is working with images outside of yourself, or even if you have a harder time with images, feelings of creating a person, creating an entity outside of yourself. And sometimes that, I mean, it's so powerful. That's how, you know, God was created, is trying to find that image to connect with, that image to speak to and have a relationship with. And again, I know that there are a lot of Christians in my sphere, and I want to invite you, like, that could be God or Jesus for you. We've been doing it for a long time because it's very powerful. The Greeks, the Romans, we have these gods, right, that we look to explain what we're sensing or feeling, these grander awarenesses and grander, big, totem-like experiences of connection with the universe, with the cosmos, with nature, and the world. And so this is something I do within my work, is I help support people. Sometimes it is easier for something outside of ourselves that is very, very different from us, or somewhat different from us, fantastical, which is also utilizing the Ajna chakra, the third eye, to help heal and support the rest of our system, the rest of, again, our mind. So I traffic in the elements. That's what's really connected to my therapy, but also the way I look at the world, to be honest. Everything is elemental. It's the building blocks of our existence. And so oftentimes with clients, I'll ask them what element they're wanting or needing to connect with. And sometimes I co-create that with them based on what I'm hearing and seeing. And we co-create then through meditation, through dialogue together, and through them feeling into that for themselves, a goddess or figure, a kind of fantastical figure. If you don't like the word goddess or god, then fairy, or, even elf, or anything like this. It's just a tool. That's why we love the movies about it, right? It's a tool of our imagination. And then I give it a element. So a goddess or a fairy of earth, water, fire, air, space. And we really try to hone in on what that feels like, looks like, depending on the person's inclination. Maybe there's this assignment to draw, or even just write out the description and then start to have some dialogue with that person. It's using creative writing and or creative arts to just support a relationship. And in that, in itself, it'll start to heal and start to create an avenue of speaking to the higher mind. And that's where we start to acknowledge that we have this tool, acknowledge that we have the capacity to have dialogue and to commune with ourselves through the imagination. And it's deeply, deeply healing. So that's one tool. And again, I draw from the elements, and you can see it in our superheroes movies. We're doing it, right? They're often drawn on different type of elemental characteristics like fire, or maybe it's more a mental power that the superhero has, and it's much more spacey and air and galactical. There's others that are much more earthy, and like Thor, where he has much more gravitas in that earth heaviness and the holding of the axe. The other aspect that we can develop, which for some people might feel more grounded, less fantastical, would be to build a sense of themselves, just a version of themselves that feels integral and feels like it has a lot of power and wisdom. And sometimes that's a future self we start to develop, or maybe it's just a sense or part of themselves that is taller, grander, more connected. So, and then we can give that a name. It might be, again, a name that is connected to that person's name, just, wise one, that inner one. And I've come up with lots of different names for people. Sometimes it's their literal name, but just like a moniker attached to it. And then we start to see them, but feel into them what they feel like, and have a dialogue with them, with that part of themselves. And that's coming a little bit from IFS. If you know this, internal family systems too, they do this, where you build the centered wise one within us. And then the other parts of ourselves can have conversation with the wise one. But first, to heal, we have to start to observe and be curious and find details around that somatically. Again, you could use your imagination, drawing into the future of who you want to be and evolve or become. Those are two big tools. So if you're looking to heal or connect to intuition, higher mind, start to understand what that is, I invite you to try this week, or whenever you hear this podcast. Take some time. If you are more driven by the fantasy, who is a god, goddess, fairy, maybe a gnome or an elf that keeps kind of knocking at your door, knocking at your heart, knocking at your mind. And it's one that's maybe trying to speak to you, or wants to be written in description or drawn on. And if feel like you're not creatively inclined, it doesn't have to have an enormous amount of detail. It's nice if you can, but even just writing a sentence or two can start to break some of the resistance and start to heal. And then again, just asking it a question. Why are you here? What do you think about this situation? What advice might you give someone in this situation? Or be more specific, what advice would you give me today with this? Maybe it's journaling more about your higher self if the fantastical thing doesn't uh, support you. And you can use the words higher mind and start to feel into, well, what does that, what do you sense somatically in your body when you start to ask, okay, what does my higher self feel like, my higher mind feel like? And then maybe it's envisioning an aspect of you that feels really strong, courageous, compassionate, kind. Um, I know you've had access to that part of yourself during your lifetime. So going into those places and seeing if there's a version of yourself you can see or feel into, and then write about or draw about. And they might have certain colors, that kind of thing. Or move like, and then just jotting down a little bit of notes, around it. To be successful, we're learning more and more with research that to write down things is very, very important for the mind's processes of integration and of action. So to take action and integration, just writing down after you do move it, like what that felt like, what that insight was for you. And maybe it comes out as dialogue. I used to write plays, so I love dialogue. And I find it so, so powerful and healing to start having conversation with that part of myself. And so this is an invitation to use your journaling to have conversations with yourself, that higher self, and that one that's confused or lonely or not understanding. You can have the conversation within yourself in your journal. And oftentimes, once we get deep into journaling, that's what we're doing. We're having a conversation. And if you so choose, maybe that's God for you. So I want to make that really broad, what that higher self could be. And then we start to create a sense of not being so alone. And the higher mind is our access to that sense of connection. It's an offering. I hope it supports you this little bit. And thank you for listening. Thank you for your service in this practice for yourself. Hopefully, the higher mind is a little bit more clear. And we're going to talk about it more this week. Stephen's going to be on tomorrow. I'm so excited. And then I'll talk about transforming, a little bit more challenging through the higher mind. And I'm looking forward to it. I hope you travel well. Enjoy. Namaste. I see you. I see you in your efforts to be present and heal. Until next time.